Good afternoon, class. In this brief video, I'm going to be giving mostly a summary, but a bit of a reflection as well on the second chapter of the book Jainism, an Introduction by Jeffery Long. It's this book right here. It's a terrific book. It's quite fascinating and provides a good introduction to Jainism. The second chapter of this book is called Mahavira and the Origins of Jainism. And so I'll be discussing concepts in this chapter and then some reflection on it when looking at dharmic religions. So there's a lot going on in this chapter. One of the sections, there's a comparison between Mahavira, the 24th Tirthankara in the Jain religion, and Siddhartha Gautama, or the Buddha. And these two individuals um, are contemporaries approximately. Traditionally, Mahavira um, was born in 599 BCE and died in 527 BCE. And the Buddha was born in 563 BCE and died in 483 BC. These are the traditional dates. There's been some discussion on whether they should be moved slightly later. Some will argue about 100 years later, but that's sort of beside the point in this particular video. And so one aspect of this chapter discusses some of the differences and some of the similarities between Mahavira and the Buddha. And then toward the end of this chapter, it goes on to discuss three theories on Jain origin, and those are the Protestant Reformation theory, the Indigenous reaction theory, and the Bronkhorst greater Magadha model, named after the Indonologist Bronkhorst. And and so I want to give some of the similarities and differences between Mahavir and the Buddha, as well as discuss these three theories, as well as discussing how to sort of conceptualize a presentation of of the origins of Jainism, given these three slightly different theories. That's quite different theories. Okay, so one of the things stressed initially in the text is some of the differences between Mahavir and the Buddha, as well as some of the similarities. And when these differences are couched, it's kind of couched in the first of the three theories, that meaning the Protestant Reformation theory. And what this theory describes is that it sort of uses the Protestant Reformation, which is in the history of Christianity, and it takes that same type of model or idea and applies it to both Mahavira and the Buddha with respect to the Vedic religion. And so we might have an analogy such as just as Martin Luther, who was in the Catholic Christian tradition, objected to certain things going on at the time within the tradition, and therefore began a reform. In a similar way, both Mahavira and the Buddha, um, immersed in the Vedic tradition, objected to a few things in that tradition and began reforms. And those reforms led to Jainism as we sort of see it at the time of Mahavira, and Buddhism as founded by the Buddha. So that would be one of three ways of looking at it. So the Vedic religion is present in India, sort of beginning to take shape between 1900 and 1700 BCE, and sort of with the Vedic religion, the customs, the social structures, the Brahmins, then the warrior caste, then the business caste. Um, and both Mahavir and the Buddha are part of this warrior caste and and from royal families. And they both um, sort of bring into being a religion. Now, one of the differences is that the Buddha brings into being a completely new idea, whereas Mahavira is the 24th Tirthankara, according to tradition, in a long line of Tirthankaras, reaching back in narrative history to around between 8 to 10,000 BCE, um, according to the literature. And so he is not creating something new, but rather reinventing something ancient for the time in which he is in. And they both Mahavira and the Buddha are sort of classified in this sharama, or ascetic or striving tradition, in which one is not a religious authority based on caste, or on being a Brahmin, but rather one is an authority through one's striving and through one's purification and exercise and understanding of knowledge and truth. And so this is one both similarity and differences. They're both part of this more ascetic movement based in the warrior caste, in which, as the author points out, um, um, many metaphors for uh, warrior training are sort of used in a spiritual context. So conquering the karmatic bondage, as opposed to conquering uh, um, someone else, or training in a spiritual sense, are utilized in much of the literature. So similarity, they're both in the warrior caste. Difference, in Buddhism, a new religion is put forth. In Jain tradition, a very ancient religion is reinvented for a particular time, or sort of rejuvenated for a particular time. And this explanation lends itself best to the overarching paradigm of this Protestant Reformation theory. Now, there's two other theories: the Indigenous reaction theory and the Bronkhorst greater Magadha model. In the Indigenous reaction theory, the Vedic religion is seen as arriving from outside of the subcontinent of India, and the Shramanic tradition, in which Mahavira is the last in a series of Tirthankaras, um, is seen as a much older religious tradition, stretching back from millennia in the past. And upon the arrival and presence of the Vedic religion over time, the aspects of, or the religions of Jainism and Buddhism in their form at the time are sort of an indigenous reaction to the Vedic religion. There are some interesting excavational forms of evidence that can lend some credence to this, though much more would be needed to strengthen this hypothesis. For example, excavations in the sites for the Harappan civilization, which predates Vedic civilization, from around 2600 BCE to 1900 BCE. In some of these excavations, it was mentioned that figures in yogic poses very similar or indicative to Jain yogic poses were found. And this it adds some credence to the idea that a religion in similar to Jainism, or a form of Jainism, might have been around, or might predate Vedic religion. And so let's pause here for a moment and just kind of review. Now, looking at the Jain religion, we have the Protestant Reformation theory, which shows Jainism being a reform movement within the Vedic tradition, much like Buddhism. And then we have this indigenous reaction theory, which articulates Jainism being a much older religion, reacting to the Vedic religion um, coming in from um, into the subcontinent of India. Um, Although some of uh, the evidence in the excavation might lend some credence to the indigenous reaction theory. One idea brought up within the Protestant Reformation theory is the amount of shared concepts between the three religions, such as the paradigm of karma, reincarnation, as well as the mention of many shared gods within the traditions, such as Indra and Brahma, just to name a few. But there's a variety of shared gods and concepts between the three traditions. And the idea here is if these religions were unrelated, if the Vedic religion um, was foreign to the indigenous religions of India, then why all of the shared concepts? And so this is where each theory has great explanatory value, and there's quite a bit of compelling aspects to both, but there are certain aspects to each which remain unexplained. And this here we bring in the third theory, which is the Bronkhorst greater Magadha model. And this suggests that there were two different Indo-European religious movements in the northern India, one more in the west, one more in the east, northern, the Vedic and the Shramanic. And from an interaction of these two religions, which had some shared concepts and some very different concepts, a different one in the Shramanic might be the aversion to any form of animal sacrifice. Um, from the interactions between these two religions, new religious movements such as Jainism in the form in which Mahavira professes it, as well as Buddhism, were formed. So it's a fascinating chapter. Three very interesting theories on the origins of Jainism, and in a certain sense, by implication, has implications for Buddhism and the Vedic religions. And so now, and I think this is probably the most fascinating part, we have three different paradigms to sort of structure the presentation of the interactions of the Vedic religion with the movements that Mahavira and the Buddha um, led. So I hope this is helpful, and I hope this provokes quite a bit of thought. It did for me. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. I will post this on Canvas. Take care.